Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Rune Words. Yes, I know, I haven't quite finished all of my rune words yet, and today we're going to be looking at stone. Just to give you guys a heads up of what rune words are left that I have not finished, I do have a list, which I have written down. I have not finished Chaos, I have not finished Famine, Gloom, Hand of Justice, King's Grace, Passion, Stone, or Venom, and we're taking care of Stone right now. Hopefully I will be able to get all of these finished before 2.4 patch releases, so we can take a look at some of the new rune words that are coming out. So first thing we got to do is we got to create the rune word. So the rune word is Shael Pul Lum, and this is capable of being made in body armor with 4 sockets. The recipe is not really that expensive. Shael runes are relatively common, although extremely useful. Rune is probably the rarest thing in this recipe, and runes are not ridiculously hard to come by. We have a Pul rune, which is slightly rare. I do tend to have a little bit of trouble getting enough Pul runes, but that's just because I use them so often, and maybe not because they're actually rare, but just because I use them so often. And then, of course, we have the Lum rune, which I have like 10 of right now on my online character. So Shael Pul Lum is going to get you Stone, which is a very, very nice plate. And this is in a non-ethereal version, and you'll see why we're making one in a non-ethereal version versus the Eth. And I'm going to go ahead and create the Eth version as well. So here is the ethereal Archon plate. And we're going to go ahead and slam them runes in there, and we're going to get the ethereal Archon plate as well. So let's go over the stats on this, and then we'll talk about this as we go along. So right off the bat, you see that the non-ethereal version has 1,954 defense, which is pretty ridiculous, especially considering that it is only a level 47 recipe. The reason why it is level 63 here that you see is because I've crafted it in an Archon plate. Archon plates have a base level of 63. If you make this in a lower level plate, like for instance, say an ornate plate, you will not have the same issue. Now, this particular armor does have a 103 strength requirement, and that is because that's what I chose to put it in. So when you are choosing the armor to put your stone in, you're going to be making that choice of what kind of plate you're going to put it in, so to keep that in mind. We also have a 60% faster hit recovery, which is static. So no matter what, when you put this rune word into an armor, you will get 60% faster hit recovery. Of course, 20% of that faster hit recovery is coming from the Shael rune, but another 40% is added by the rune word, which is freaking awesome. We also get a variable defense of in between 250 to 290% enhanced, which is not like nothing to shake a stick at. It's a lot of defense, especially when you consider that this thing also offers you extra defense on top of that in the form of stats, and you'll see. So you know, just the non-ethereal version is 1,954, and the ethereal version is 2,884, which is ridiculous. And neither one of these are perfect rolls, so do keep that in mind. We also have a defense versus missile of plus 300, which is a flat amount. And while it might not seem like that much, you have to take into account that essentially versus a missile attack, this armor has what? 2,800, 900, 3,084, 3,184 defense versus missile, which is pretty darn ridiculous. We've also got 16 to strength, 16 to vitality, and 10 to energy, and these are all static. So that's not weird numbers. That's just that is exactly what it is every single time. We also have all resistances 15, which is rather low, especially for a level 47 armor. But I mean, with the defense that the thing is providing you, you can probably afford to put some other equipment on, which gives you some better resistances. We have increases maximum durability by 15%, which is, I believe that's because this is a superior base. I think it's because it's a superior base. We also have level 16 Molten Boulder charges and level 16 Clay Golem charges. You heard that right. This actually gives you a clay golem. Now, of course, the charges are not usable on the ethereal version, or rather you can use them, but there's no way for you to recharge them. So do keep that in mind. Also, you will have to pay to repair this item. So you may not want to make it in a superior base if you want to use the charges, because the cost of repairing it is going to be quite extreme. But I'm going to go ahead and repair the armor so that I can cast the clay golem, and we can see how much per charge the clay golem costs. Now, at level 16, the clay golem is actually fairly nice. He's at 1,718 life. He's got attack rating 320%. His damage is negligible, but he does apply a 60% slow upon attacking, which is absolutely amazing. Having a clay golem by your side on any kind of melee character or even a ranged character, just as a off tank, is absolutely excellent. But let's see how much it costs us per charge to repair him. So we're looking at 4,867 to repair one charge of the clay golem, which is not bad. Let's see how much it costs to repair the Molten Boulder. Now, you might think the Molten Boulder is not very good. It only does like 90 to 100 damage. But if I remember correctly, the Molten Boulder does have like a very interesting knockback sort of stun effect. And it also has a little explosion. I can't remember right off the top of my head. So we're going to play around with it, shall we? Yeah, see, it actually knocks the monsters away, which is kind of interesting. And I feel like you could use this in a emergency, just to like draw some attention away from yourself, just to knock the monsters away. It might not actually be all that useful, but the clay golem is. And we used what? We used 7 charges, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so we used 7 charges, and it's 6,814. So not even really that expensive to repair the charges on this item. I feel like that clay golem is absolutely excellent, and for some reason I just never knew about this particular piece of armor, and now that I know about it, I think that clay golem might just make his way into some of my builds. Now, this armor is actually used very often for mercenaries. As you can see, it has an extremely high amount of defense, and it has an extremely high amount of faster hit recovery, along with an extremely high amount of defense versus missile, and the all resistances plus the stat bonuses can definitely be used to help your mercenary put on other pieces of equipment, like, for instance, a Colossus Insight Bulge, or whatever other piece of equipment you might want to give them. Because you can see, my merc only has 147 strength,
I'll put that to good
and
use.
now she has 163, so not bad. The real sort of benefit that I can see to stone, and by the way, if you take off the armor, the clay golem dies. So you don't get to keep the clay golem if if you take it off. The real benefit that I've seen to stone is that it is a relatively cheap, low-level mercenary armor that can be created once you find an rune. Now, granted, the Treachery, which is also a fairly decent mercenary armor, can also be created fairly cheaply once you find a single rune, which makes Treachery a little bit cheaper than stone. However, I feel like stone is the superior option for a mercenary that is not quite fully leveled up yet. Whereas Treachery is the superior option for a mercenary who's got the right equipment, who has the right helmet. You know, you've got the right sockets in his gear. You know, you've set him up properly. Treachery is definitely, I think, the superior version to stone. However, stone is the superior version to Treachery when you don't have things set up properly. Because, number one, it's going to give him a massive amount of defense, which will protect him from pretty much any melee and ranged hit that comes in. He's going to get a massive amount of faster hit recovery, which most mercenaries, in fact, all mercenaries, including the Act 3, the Act 1, the Act 2, and I think even the Act 5 mercenary, have pretty horrible faster hit recovery breakpoints. They also do not block. So having a massive amount of defense, along with a massive amount of faster hit recovery, will help protect your mercenary quite well. This armor can actually come in handy very well for a character that does not have a tank option. So, like, say for instance, you're an Amazon. Amazons can summon a Valkyrie. If you're a Necromancer, you can summon a Clay Golem. If you are, a particular character who has the ability to create these minions which can tank for you, then that's a good thing. Like maybe even a Grizzly Bear for a Druid. But this can be an option to avoid that, or for characters who do not have a tanking option. A level 16 Clay Golem is probably going to do fairly well all the way through Nightmare difficulty and probably a little bit into Hell. And if you beef him up with a little bit of Auras, like for instance, maybe give him some more defense with Defiance, or maybe give him some more resistance with Salvation, or whatever it is that you can beef him up with, he very well could survive much better. Now, granted, he doesn't get the synergy bonuses from Golem Mastery and Summon Resistance, so there is that. And you may find that you're casting him quite often, but 16 charges is a lot, and I feel like that's enough. That that in a situation where you might desperately need him, he should stay alive fairly well. But granted, you do have to make this in a non-ethereal version to get the Clay Golem. All in all, I feel like you could even use this as like an army piece. So, you know, there's items in the game that give charges for particular golems and things like that, and you could totally take this particular piece and use it to build that army. So take, for instance, say you were on Amazon. You could have the Valkyrie and you could have the Clay Golem up at the same time. Or maybe you were a druid, a hurricane druid. You could have the hurricane druid grizzly bear up. You can have some ravens up. You could also have the Clay Golem, and the slow from the Clay Golem is actually going to help you out a ton. I don't ever really think that the Clay Golem is good for damage. Like he's terrible for damage. Don't get me wrong, because I don't want you guys to think that he's like some amazing like damaging god or anything. He's really not. He absolutely sucks when it comes to damage. But what he is good at is absorbing hits and slowing monsters down. You notice how slow these guys go when he hits them? Like, they can barely even attack. They're like raising their arm. They're like, and then they get interrupted. And this is what makes him so tanky. Is not necessarily that he has enough life, not necessarily that he has enough defense. It's that most of the time, whatever he's attacking is ridiculously slowed to the point where they're trying to hit, but they really can't. And this kind of thing can be stacked with other effects, other slows target effects. So if you have Decrepify, if you have slows target on an item, if you have slows target on your Mercenary, those kind of things will all stack together to make that slows target as high as possible. And the cap, I believe, is 80%. So when you have a golem which is already starting you off at a nice 60, adding in some extra effects doesn't take too much to get to 80. It doesn't stack like if I have 20 and he has 60, it doesn't just immediately stack to 80. What it does is it hits the number first for 60, and then mine hits the remaining number for 20 until eventually it hits the total of 80. So you know, if let's say for instance we had let's just use a mythical number of 100. And he applies his negative 60%, of course I'm going to have 40% left. And then if I apply my negative 20%, I'm only going to reduce that by 8, which means he now has 32 of his speed left. And then if somebody else comes in and hits him with a 50%, that's still only going to bring him down 16, which is going to bring him too low, because that's 4 below the 80% cap, which means he would be as slow as humanly possible, which would be a speed of what, 20. So 100 is full speed, 20 is basically what he's capable of getting down to. So it would be a constant, never-ending thing that automatically goes all the way down to that slow number, and it doesn't last forever. But the cool thing is you know the golem is always hitting, he's always in there whacking stuff, and everything he hits gets slowed, which is pretty cool. All in all, I think this is a really solid rune word for a lot of characters. It may not be better than a Fortitude. It may not be better than a Enigma or a Chains of Honor, but it is also extremely cheap by comparison to any of those ones that I just put out. The real competition of Stone, in my opinion, is Treachery. Treachery also has faster hit recovery. It also has a form of physical damage reduction, as well as a massive resistance increase, and you know it also provides an extra form of damage by giving you venom. And I think what really makes this armor special, though, is not the defense and it's not the fast rate recovery. It's really that clay golem. I feel like that clay golem can come in handy on a lot of characters, and if you are any kind of character who can utilize this armor and fight alongside the clay golem, I think you will find that that he will be a noble ally for many levels. He may not be able to hang in there with Bale in hell difficulty, but in nightmare difficulty, a level 16 golem is probably going to be able to trash just about anything he comes across. Not damage-wise, but tanking-wise. And it's just a really nice plate. I'm trying to think like what I would make this in to get a level 47 version of this. Obviously, Archon plate is not the right choice because it is a level 63 armor. That's more of like an endgame piece of equipment. I'm thinking right off the top of my head, a 4-socket ornate plate would probably be a really good choice, because I'm pretty sure the 4-socket ornate plate is low enough level that it would allow you to make this in it, and it would still have a pretty decent amount of defense. Let me look it up real quick just to be extra positive. So the ornate plate has a level requirement of 25. Yeah, yes, the ornate plate would work just fine. Theoretically, we could also maybe go with... trying to think here off the top of my head. Just something that's lower level, that is a decent defense. Because obviously you want good defense on this, but you also don't want to increase the level of it too much. And I'm thinking like Wire Fleece or perhaps a Great Hauberk. So Wire Fleece is level 53, so that's too high. And Great Hauberk is level 56. What about a Dusk Shroud? Dusk Shroud is level 49. That's close. And so it looks like we are kind of just leaning toward the ornate plate. The ornate plate is low enough level, but it should have high enough defense that making a stone in the ornate plate would probably be one of the best choices for a lower level character. And then later on, if you happen to have the runes, you could make another stone in something a little bit higher, like a Great Hauberk or an Archon plate. It also really comes down to whether you need to make this for your mercenary specifically, or whether you need to make this for you. And honestly, I'm really coming down to this thinking in my mind, which is, if I were to make this early on, I'm making this early on because I don't have the runes for anything else, right? I don't have the runes for a Fortitude. I don't have the runes for Chains of Honor. I don't have the runes for Enigma. I don't have the runes for Duress. Maybe I'm thinking about Duress versus Stone, and this is what I'm choosing. But if I make it in an ethereal version, I can't use the clay golem. I can't use it on any of my characters. It doesn't have any type of indestructibility or repairs, on it, and this makes it less useful. It's just like my thinking with Fortitude. When you find your first low rune, do you make your first Fortitude in an ethereal base, or do you make your first Fortitude in a non-ethereal base? And this is my thinking on this. Is if I'm going to make a stone, if I'm going to invest the rune and the Pul rune and the Lum rune, whereas Shael rune's not really that big of a deal. If I'm going to invest those runes, do I want to be able to use it on my characters as well as my mercenary? Because the non-ethereal version is not exactly that big of a difference. We're talking about, what is that, about 900 defense difference between the two. And by making it in the ethereal version, I'm losing access to that clay golem. I could no longer cast it. So if I wanted to use the clay golem for whatever reason, I can't, because now I've made the ethereal version, and I can't wear the ethereal version because it will eventually break, and I can't use the clay golem charges, or I mean I can, but the clay golem charges will eventually disappear as well, and I'll not be able to repair them. So I feel like if I were gonna make a stone really early on for a mercenary, I would probably make the first stone that I created in a non-ethereal base, just so that I would have access to that clay golem. And then, later on, if I happen to find another rune, which is really the only real rare item in this armor, I might make one in a nice ethereal base. Probably one in a higher tier. So, like, for instance, my first one would probably be in a non-ethereal ornate plate. whereas my second stone would probably be in a very nice 15% ethereal elite base for the much higher defense. That's pretty much it. I've covered just about everything I think I can on this particular armor. It's a nice armor. Is it better than some of the other ones? I'm not sure. I think this is a use case scenario thing. And I really think it comes down to that clay golem. I feel like the clay golem is the clincher. Like, do you need the clay golem? Because if you don't, then the armor is probably not better than some other choices. If you do want the clay golem, though, the stone becomes a superior choice, I think, because it gives you the ability to deflect some of that damage off to the golem instead of yourself. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, and look forward to more RuneWorld videos coming up. I'm going to finish the series.